Okay, we're live.
Okay.
I'm going to call the meeting to order of the Art and Cultural Events Council. First item on the agenda is we're going to defer the minutes, which I'm assuming meaning they're not ready yet, and we'll do those at the November meeting. Is that right, Stephanie?
That's correct.
Before we move into old business, first I want to welcome Dylan and Kimberly, who are the two people that some of you have not met. Dylan, Kimberly, can you say hello?
Hello, so happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Hello, and ditto that.
You'll get to know them as the year goes on. And officially, I am told you guys are not going to be officially approved on the Arts Council until this week or next week, Stephanie?
It's Tuesday. They had to, typically it's the first Tuesday of the month, but they had to move it this time. So Tuesday.
So you officially can't vote at this meeting, but the next meeting you can. That's the only thing I can tell you about it. So, but thank you. We really appreciate you consenting to serve on the Arts Council, and we welcome you with open arms.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I wanted also to first talk a little bit before we go right into the season calendar financial review. Talk a little bit about Becky sent me an email regarding vax requirements at the Sandcastle events, and I just want to remind folks of the resorts policy, which basically is consistent with CDC policy, but it basically means we cannot have a vaccine mandate or do any protocols which differ from CDC policy. They said we can do it, we just can't hold our events at their venue. So that's our choice. Becky sent me a note, which was sort of interesting because it had to do with the Our World comment. And they used language which was very interesting. They basically said that members should be fully vaccinated before considering attending large-scale events, including Our World. And due to the number of members expected and out of respect for our presenters, we strongly recommend masks for all those in attendance. And that's basically what we are saying. And what I'm going to suggest is that Stephanie and I get together probably with Marianne Connolly and Town Council and sort of see the kind of language we can sort of play around with, which is a little bit, maybe a little stronger than what we've been using. But just again, to say that we just can't require masks. I know a lot of venues, and we talked about this last time in Charleston, can do what they want because they are independent nonprofit corporations and have a little bit more freedom than the town of Kiowa, which has to follow basically the state, meaning Governor McMaster's protocols. Am I stating that pretty correctly, Stephanie?
That's correct. And the other thing was that, that like with the difference of the Gilliard is that the town or that the city, they could make restrictions with their buildings, which the Gilliard is a part of City of Charleston. So that's was one of the things as well.
Yeah, Jody wrote me an email, again, talking about it. And I basically responded and said, we have the freedom actually at Seabrook to institute our own protocols. But the other thing we have to consider is sort of consistency about our message to our audience at our events. And I don't want to have like 4 different protocols at 4 different venues, because I think that would confuse the hell out of people going forward.
Well, clearly, I think that the Our World message is the best I've seen. And I know that you said that's sort of what we're doing, but we need to say that's what we're doing. So I'd be really happy if we could say that with every time we send information out about an event. I think we should say it when we get up and introduce. Well, but that's
even the resort has language about vaccinations on their website. And if we use their language, I'm sure we'll be consistent with policy. But instead of sort of having a big, long discussion about this, which would be repeating what we did in October, I'd sort of like to suggest that Stephanie and I sort of take a look at the different language phrases that people are coming up with and see if we can be a little bit stronger in our message to our patrons, if that's okay.
That's very good. I approve of that. I do think we can take into account the fact that the large number of our audience are not going to be familiar with the resorts information. So we don't have to get as close to it as you might think, you know. I would love to have it extremely strong, but I realize that we have limits.
On the other hand, I don't see how either the town or the resort could object to the way they phrased it but they just said you should consider the fact that you're vaccinated in order for you to come. Doesn't say don't come. And I'm going to Pure Theater tomorrow night. I have to bring my vaccination card. We're not asking that, but the Gilliard is too, North Charleston is too. But we're saying, we could say it the way our world said it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can consider that. And as I think I told Becky, is that if we held all our events at the Sandcastle, we could do whatever we wanted.
Right.
We can't hold our events at the Sandcastle, however. So
I think some churches are requiring it now. Dan said that Church of Our Savior doesn't. I know my church on Johns Island Presbyterian does, and I think some of the others probably do. So maybe at Holy Spirit they do. I don't know.
Holy Spirit does. Holy Spirit doesn't. I already checked with them.
They do not, but they might not object to our doing it, and neither might the Church of Our Savior object.
Again, the question we have to consider is are we having to do different messages for different events in terms of our patrons? Yes, you have to be vaccinated for this, but no, you don't have to for this. I mean, you have to think about whether that's going to be confusing or not.
I think the strongly recommend wording is good. I also think it would be good if we were willing to for the people who introduce the program to say we strongly recommend that you continue to wear your masks during the program.
May I just jump in? I know you don't want to belabor this, but if I could jump in with the experience that Steffi and I have had with Burning River Brass, that's coming up in December at Holy Spirit. You recall we were all going to check in with our artists and see what their requirements were. We heard from Burning River Brass, and they asked for what I will call the Gilliard protocol, and that is proof of vaccination or negative test and masks. And we explained that Holy Spirit does not require proof. And they responded by saying, well, most churches don't. And they have run into that because they play in a lot of churches. But what they asked us for was a commitment to maintain between 10 and 12 feet between them and the audience. And we already told them that it would be a reduced number of people and that we would strongly encourage mask wearing. Stephanie sent them a copy of the sign that we have. So, I mean, what are these people going to do? They're hungry. They want to play. So yes, they will come and we will do whatever we can. But I would really love if we could get that stronger Sandcastle, our world message out there beforehand. So.
Well, Stephanie and I will work on that, and hopefully by the events coming up, we'll have a message that might be a little stronger, and certainly we can announce it. Whoever's making the announcements, as Judy mentioned, so that would be great. I also wanted to mention. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you serve drinks, they're going to take the mask off.
Yeah.
So the message is moot. Yeah.
That's true, and that's that's what happens on airlines as well. So it's very true. I wanted to mention something about just West Beach and some of the. I was in touch while I was in Africa. Barbara Steele got a hold of me just so I could connect her with Becky about the
Pure theater.
the theater event coming up, Pure Theater. She also happened to mention, I think she might be a little bit frustrated sometimes with the communication coming back and forth in terms of things. Stephanie and I have discussed, down the road, once we have our full-time arts administrator sort of on staff, is I think we're eventually going to want to move that person to be the sole communicator with Barbara. I'm looking for, when Barbara retires, which may be sooner than later, we may get a person who has absolutely no history or education with the Arts Council and is going to want to handle it a lot differently than Barbara does. And Barbara's been really, she has a relationship with many of you that's longstanding. She appreciates that. I think she really appreciated the fact that I'm sort of dealing with the venue scheduling, in April and May. But it's tough because she has a staff that doesn't quite have the relationship with you guys that she does, and so she's sort of fighting battles internally in terms of what we do and what we present. And I think when we deal with her and communicate with her for the time being until our staff person comes online, we need to be as professional as possible with her and communicate, directly articulate what we want ahead of time and give her as much advance notice as possible. I don't want to belabor it. I just want to mention it because it's something I sort of got underneath the words that she sent me in the last email. There was a little bit of frustration there. Okay, I want to move on and just sort of review the past events. The Charlestones van, sounded like it went over well. Do you anything to report on that?
One person came up to me and was a little upset that people weren't wearing masks. And I explained to her that, we cannot require them. We encourage people to use them, but so I just suggested, we left room to social distance if you can do that. And then when I made the announcements, I told the audience to be conscious of people around them and their need to social distance and so forth, and that we suggest you wear your mask, and nobody put their mask back on. So
Most of the people at that event, they were wearing their masks.
Yes, they
a
were.
lot of them did. Yeah, a lot of
Yes.
them did. Yeah.
How did the event go, Van, for those of us who weren't there?
Oh, it went very well. Very well received. One indication is that they had a 10-minute intermission and nobody left.
It would be great to have them again.
It's not the usual.
That's good. Joan, you had your first piano bar. How did that go?
Oh, it went great. We had no idea how many people would be there with the COVID situation, and we had 65 people, and a lot of them were the regulars that come and new people, but it was very positive. Quite a few people even got up and danced, which was, kind of neat. And I anticipate with the Steve Joy Quartet that it's going to be very successful. Of course, he's a native Kiowa person, so that will make it even. He has a lot of friends and following here. But it went well with the, I have them well trained to clean up after themselves. So and I appreciated having Kristen there to help. And so overall, I thought it was, don't you think so, Kristen? It was nice.
It was very well received and people had a great time.
Yeah.
And Gary is very, very good at his job. Yeah.
Yeah.
As
So-
a job.
So it was, it was
ahead.
very good.
I guess I'll call on both Bill and Joan to talk about the Morants. Bill, in terms of the planning, and then Joan, you were there sort of guest hosting.
Yeah. I was pleased I got a chance to come back and saw the last number that they put on, and the audience gave them a standing ovation at the end. So I thought that was good. They seemed to enjoy it. And I was pleased by the work that Andrew did on the sound. That room is a crazy room for sound, because it has bounces all over the place with hard walls and cement, and they put up extra curtains, and Andrew did a nice job on working on the sound part of it. So that was really good to see. So, and Joan was my partner, and Stephanie was a great help. So I left myself in good control of people. So that was great.
Everybody had a great time. And Bill, why don't you tell them? A lot of people had no idea how it was set up. It was set up beautifully. Yeah.
Yeah, that room, what we set up is 166 tickets were given out. So I had them set the room up, and there was spacing that worked out really well, with 4 people at some tables and 6 people at another. And it gave a good spacing of everything. And the stage was at least 12 feet back from the first row of the audience. So that helped, because we did have a couple of people that were actors out of New York that had a contract which said that they wanted people to have a vaccination certificate kind of thing. And when Brad talked to them, they said that was okay. They would go along with the way we set everything up and did the numbers of people and the stage setup. So they were pleased by that. So I think only one person that they had to replace from the cast.
Oh,
So
really?
that was good to see.
And one of the effects of reducing capacity, you recall, everybody, that we started the season thinking that we would reduce to 75% capacity.
Mhm.
And at the meeting a couple months ago, we decided to go to 50%. So that's where we are now. And for an event like Marantz, when that means that the tickets sell out in like an hour, Stephanie, is that right?
We're pretty fast. Yeah.
Right.
So that's the sort of downside of COVID and
Right.
reducing audiences, that we've got social distance, but we tend to piss off the people that can't get tickets now. So you can't win for losing, unfortunately. And that's going to continue probably with our reduced capacities for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and the other thing is that just while we're on this is we haven't talked about the future, but Charlton Singleton, who was out in California, I spoke to him, and he started off with the idea of having vaccination and masks and everything. And I explained to him, I said, well, that becomes a problem, etc. But when I explained to him how we set up Marantz, he said that was fine. He'd go along with that. So
and we'll talk about future artists in a minute when we get to those reports. In terms of the upcoming stuff, we've got Pure on October 17th, and Becky, I know you've been in touch with Barbara now, and we've got the setup, and we've got the message that the risers, they went up in price, so our budget has gone up for that. Anything else you can tell us, Becky, about Pure?
Yes, well, I've talked to them about audience as well. I'm going there actually tomorrow night for a play, and I know how they've got that set up. So I told Sharon Gracie that what we were doing was 50% audience. We're going to set the risers up the same way as we have, in sort of a V shape, and they're going to not have a stage, but act right on the floor, do their set that way. And I'm planning to set up the chairs, Barbara knows this, in 2s and 4s. And I'm going to try that. We haven't tried that with other things yet, but I'm going to try it for the symphony as well. So this will be the first time. So with 125 there instead of 250 and the same number of risers, I'm thinking of the way the things were set up for Spoleto at the Dock Street Theater, and also in their outdoor venues and so on, where they did chairs, 2s, 4s. Chamber Music, Charleston is doing that as well this year, this season. And Sharon's fine with that. And I hope everyone else is fine with that. It's going to be a little complicated, but I have a vision of how I saw it before. So I'll be there when Snyder's gets there and work with them and then get the chairs done. And there's a little program that Stephanie's putting together. They just sent the info. So if it's just one sheet thing, that's okay, I thought. I don't think we always have to have fancy programs with covers and pictures and, just as long as it tells a little bit.
Mhm.
Becky, I suggest putting the programs right on the chairs instead of handing them out. That reduces contact. And that's what we've talked about a couple of meetings ago.
Okay, sure.
If I could, also something that just triggered my memory from the Charlestones, our typical practice is we do half, but that was not enough for that
No.
event. So we might want to up just for, until we're through this, whenever that is, that we actually do print a majority of however many people are in there so that we do reduce the people trying to share, because they're not sharing and we don't want them to share, right? So
yeah, I mean, it's always been kind of hard to figure out who's with who. And in this case, I think it's just better. If we don't do the fancy ones, it doesn't cost us much to just do it for everybody.
I agree as well. And Becky, so a week before, well, this is almost a week before, you can send out an email, see if you need some help and who's going to attend the event so that to put tickets aside for them.
I'd love to know who can be there. 4:00 on the 17th, Sunday afternoon, and come, half an hour early should be enough time.
3:30?
Yeah, I
3:30.
think.
Okay.
I don't think people come before that. If they do, what time do the ticket people come?
well, they're going to be there an hour beforehand. And if I were you, I might this season, if we can, try to do at least 45 minutes beforehand, because that's also an unintended consequence with the lower tickets as people are coming earlier because of seating. So they're not really sure about the seating per event. It's not like we have an auditorium where they know where they're going to, be. So.
Well, I'll be there, the whole time.
Yeah.
Probably all day on Sunday and part
little-
of the day on Saturday too. So I can instruct them however we want to do that. And then if everybody else will come, let's say 45 minutes to 30 minutes ahead, because there's not much for us to do except say hi. Really.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. If there's any other help that you need, but if you could email Becky if you need a ticket, that would be great. It's a little hard to do that on Zoom, but just let her know if you're going to be there. That would be helpful.
Well, I don't think we need tickets, do we, Stephanie?
No, but I need to know how many people are so that I can. Well, actually, I've reserved what I thought the number was. So based on previous participation. So I have to have those numbers reserved ticket wise because I need a seat associated with your space.
Well, I told Barbara to set up some extra chairs for the Arts Council.
Okay, good.
So the 125 she'll set up for the audience, and then more for us.
Let's just do a quick go around. I'm not, Stephanie, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make it or not. I've got something coming up in Washington, D.C., but I should know by Tuesday. Joan, are you going to be able to make it? 2 tickets for Joan. Kristen? 2 tickets. Judy, not, right?
No.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Yes. Dylan?
Yes.
Okay. Becky, of course, will be there. Bill?
I'm
is a
not
no?
sure yet.
Okay. Jody?
No, but I'd be happy to come early and help you put the programs on seats.
Oh,
come
thank you, Jody.
Our events people can do that. Actually, that's
Oh,
one
okay.
thing.
Yeah, I can do it myself.
Van, what about you?
No, I will not be able to make that one.
Stephanie, does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, Kimberly and Dylan, so usually you get 1 ticket, 2 tickets for you and your, whoever you want to bring with you. So will you both be wanting 2 tickets, or will 2 be sufficient?
2 will be sufficient. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. Van, any, you want to report on Mr. Fung on the 2nd of November?
Yes, directed to Stephanie, they will need the 2 nights lodging
I have their
I-
confirmation. I'll email you.
coming in on November 1st and 2nd,
Yes.
which is already set up, but they will need both of those. They are, we're told about the COVID protocols that we have in place in South Carolina, and they've accepted that. So that's okay. And I told them we were down to 50% capacity, so that's fine with them.
Okay.
We do have a problem with lighting. The Charlestones, we had to actually bring in extra lighting. David Childs put up some extra lighting because once we got to the concert and realized how much they needed to spread out, the existing lighting was not sufficient. So we did remedy that for that concert. David says he's going to try to get up on the rafters and redirect things and adjust them where they need to be before our November 2nd concert, and said check with him in 2 weeks. So I don't know, maybe we should put lighting back in for that event just in case he doesn't get that done. I don't know.
Okay.
It is an evening concert, so we got to have the lighting.
I'll need to make contact with them and see, since we let go of our reservation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or we can just tell David Childs that we're just going to go with on lighting this time, and then he can get it done when he gets it done. Maybe for the next one, he'll have it all set up rather than waiting. I don't know how much notice the lighting people need.
Yeah, I can email them. this
Okay.
week.
And will
Yeah.
it make a difference that we've got 1 musician and an accompanist as opposed to a vocal group in terms of lighting?
Well, it's spread out as well because of the grand piano. You know, you got the grand piano, and then you've got the cellist on the other end of it. So they're just
Van,
as well spread out, and that they're in a different location. The Charlestones were actually up on a step just inside the chancel rail, where the piano would be down on the floor, which is a different area. And so the lighting is going to be different anyway, what's already set up. But David claims he's going to try to get it adjusted in time, but we'll see.
Van, which day do you want the piano tuned on? Monday or Tuesday?
I would say Monday.
Okay.
Thank you.
A question, Van, since they're going to be down on the floor, do you think it's a good idea to move a couple of rows out so that they don't have people right in their laps?
That's exactly what we'll do. Yeah.
Good.
I don't know if we'll move the chairs, but we'll certainly mark them off and rope them off or whatever we need to do to create that space. Yeah. And we have at 50% capacity, we can easily accommodate that. Yeah. And we do have chairs to put out if we need to. So. Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, we're going to do that.
Stephanie, is there anything else you need from Van on that concert?
Program.
I will need program information. And it looks like that, you know, I did the reduced tickets through December. There's going to be 90 seats available for that. Because we did not incorporate the chairs, the additional chairs.
When's the ticket release for that, Stephanie? Do you know?
It's next Friday or Friday. For Kiowa is, yeah, the 15th.
What,
We're not making it to the public release dates.
Yeah,
Or
90 is
haven't yet.
fine. Yeah, we just put out chairs so people could social distance if they
Yeah,
needed to.
okay,
I'll get, if I can get a program to you.
okay.
I had on old business. I also had, we asked to at least check with the artists that you've been working with or the events to see if there are any other COVID restrictions from upcoming artists. And I was wondering, especially for CSO, our magician, we've reported on Burning River. Jody's reported on that already, but has anyone heard anything else?
Yeah, I called Blackwell and he's fine. Matter of fact, he just got back for 2 weeks performing at the Tropicana in Vegas. So, but he says he's okay with, you know, our present policy. Of course, it's over at Seabrook, and I'll be going over there to, you know, work with the setup and stuff. Plan to set it up very much as we did for Julian, with some seating in a semicircle and then with tables. So Harold seems fine with that, but I have to find out about the stage, how big the stage is. But we have a little time to work with it.
Yeah.
But you're Seabrook, you're going to use Seabrook stage, right? Okay. I wanted to also sorry, David, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But when I was talking to Snyder, I want to just let everybody know, apparently they are almost completely booked through May.
oh,
So actually the little, a very kind man, William, helped us out for Pure. But they are really, really taxed. In fact, they weren't even sure that they were going to be able to help us out with that. And so there are a few other providers in town, but if you are, you know, once we get, if we end up having your event and you actually need to contact Snyder, you might want to do it sooner rather than later because of everyone's starting back up, holding things, having weddings, and all of their supplies are in demand
too. Yeah.
So
I was just going to make a poor joke for Joan to see if Mr. Blackwell can make COVID disappear.
I'll put it out there for
Any other artists that you've been in touch with? And Judy, I know Liquid Pleasure is still problematic in terms of January. That's something I think we need to decide at our November meeting as to sort of make or break whether we're going to hold it. Oh, you're on mute.
I think we should. I think it's only fair to the group. They put up with our canceling last year and were very gracious about it. But I mean, these guys, they have other jobs, but they really depend on this kind of gig for their living. And they have to use our contract. East Coast Entertainment, who's their agent, has changed their contract so that the deposit people pay is not refundable. Ours is, but I do think we need to make a decision early. I hope things are a heck of a lot better. Otherwise, anything that we try to do, to me, is just going to be a nightmare. So we'll decide in November. I think that's an excellent time.
What about Quentin?
Do you want to talk about the symphony?
Yes.
Yes, David.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Because I found out, I talked to them and told them what I was planning to do. And I'm thinking of 300, because I think we could set up 600. So 50% would be 300. And then I want to try to also do the 2-4 pattern and back up the audience from them. And then they are going to look into the risers. They know they can use Barbara Steele's stage, but they need risers to go up higher for the brass and percussion and so on. And they also want to, they have required all of their staff and musicians to be vaccinated. And some will be wearing masks themselves, if they can be, to play instruments. So they want the audience to stay separated from them so that when the musicians go in and out from their green room area, which is further back than the door that the audience goes through, they would like that to be grouped off. And then we will announce something about try not to approach any of the musicians because they're trying to keep them very safe and healthy. And so they're okay, they understand our situation that we can't require those things that we would like to require. But I said we'd be talking about it today and that we would be considering stronger language so that we hope people will wear masks during the concert. But it's a big space and they know that. Then I also talked to them about the reception. Remember this reception we had talked about?
Becky, before you move on to that, let me ask you this, because we're seating theater style and there's no tables. Do you think we can mitigate this by not having a bar for this event, and that means there's no eating and drinking, so there's no reason for people to take off their masks, those who are wearing masks?
That's certainly okay with me. I think it's a little hard anyway when you're sitting in rows to be holding a glass of wine. Yeah, I don't think our audience would object. I mean, they're not serving alcohol on airplanes now or a lot of places because of this very issue. So
yeah, I thought I would put that out because as Van mentioned, if once you introduce liquids, the masks come off and it's sort of an excuse. And I'm not sure we need to have a bar set up for the symphony at that time.
It's typically for the symphony, the resort doesn't make an awful lot of sales anyway. It's a little early. And I think we could simply say we don't have a bar this afternoon. And that's that.
Or not, we don't even have to say it. It's just not there.
Well, if someone asks.
Well, they're
Yeah,
used
right.
to that being there. Yeah, so.
But then could I say a few words about the reception? The symphony had a reception after their masterworks a couple of weeks ago. I didn't go because I was leaving the next morning very early on a plane, so I couldn't stay. But it was outdoors under a tent, so that possibly made it easier for them to have. And I talked to Kyle Lane about what he thinks. And he thinks as long as Ken's comfortable, that it would be okay. I've talked to Barbara Steele, and I know what they charge for bottles of champagne. That's not something we have to be concerned about because the symphony itself or the committee that's planning this would pay for the champagne. And I've talked to the mayor, and he's going to do a proclamation. And I'm going to get the committee to work on what the proclamation will say. And I thought maybe we could get it framed, and the mayor is going to present it in between numbers at the concert. And it would be a surprise to Ken. They wouldn't tell him that's going to happen. But I want to talk to Ken about his comfort level for a reception afterwards. Barbara said we cannot do it in the lobby, which is a bigger, more airy space. And I'm not sure why we can't, because I think that would be ideal. But so I need to see what kind of room we could do it in.
And you had a question?
I'm having difficulty reconciling what you said earlier about not approaching the musicians as they come and go with then having a reception afterwards.
Musicians wouldn't be there. This would only be for Ken
Only
and the
Ken.
audience. To honor Ken and his last year of performing. And his actual last year, I don't know if you all know this, but he's not going to conduct at our spring concert, we've been told. They will have someone else. So this will be his last one at Kiowa.
Yeah, I would really gauge his comfort level in terms of audience members coming up to him and either shaking hands or bumping elbows in a sort of a close conference room. If it
There
can't
goes
be
the
held in the
champagne.
lobby.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk to him because he did the reception after Masterworks. I don't know how that went because I wasn't there. So I will talk to him about it and we'll go on from there.
And Becky, we don't have event services scheduled for that concert. So do you have members of the league that are going to kind of eye the room and let people know when there's no more seats left, or because there's no tickets?
Sorry, Stephanie, I couldn't hear you very well.
I said we don't have event services scheduled for that event.
Oh, yeah.
And so is the members going to kind of man the doors and see spacing wise so that, I mean, who's going to control the entry points?
Well, I think that's back to us again, because once the chairs are filled, what shall we do? We have to be able to say no one else can enter at a certain point, right? When we can't let people just bunch up in the back because the chairs were all filled. So since we're not requiring tickets, that is tricky. That is going to be a little tricky.
Becky, would it be, should we rethink the idea of not requiring tickets and perhaps make it a ticketed event so that Arts Council members aren't sort of being bouncers and telling people they can't enter?
Well, I don't know what everyone thinks, but we've never had tickets for it before.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem for the people who have been working as docents during the house tour. They are not going to know that they're going to need a ticket and not going to get one, and yet they're going to want to come to the concert. So that's going to be tough. This is not a good situation.
Why can't you just tell them now that they will need a ticket if we decided that?
That's what we need to do. Yeah.
No. Otherwise, we would have like counters or something, and
yeah, that's what I was going to suggest, is maybe having counters. But to be honest with you, I mean, we need to look at, because if we're talking about adding event services, that we're already growing very close to being at budget. So, yeah. I mean, we have a little bit of play, but I don't know. I haven't scheduled them or asked them about that date. So I'd need to A, see if they're available, and B, yeah, I guess I would need to either give whoever at the CSOL was going to do it counters, or you could just see obviously how many seats are still left open, but
You want me to ask the CSOL to help with it? I mean,
don't they typically?
they know.
No?
We've had it in the venue which is big enough that people just file in, and we hope that there's enough seats for them. The problem this year is if we cut it in half to 250 or 300, those seats are going to fill out quickly, and we may have some people that won't be able to get in, and we're just going to have to figure out how to communicate that if we go with no tickets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, think about going with tickets. It's an unusual year, and maybe people will, respond to the need for that because we have to carefully control the numbers. Becky, don't you think we can get that communication out to the people who would need it? And
Yes, I don't see why we couldn't, because I'm already in the middle of coordinating information back and forth. And sure, I don't know why we couldn't explain to CSOL and others, our own audience, that this time, because we're limiting the numbers, that we need to have tickets.
And if the docents are from someplace else, or the parking assistant people too, volunteers, maybe saving some tickets for those folks and giving them out separately to them beforehand.
We can hold some back like we do with Arts Council members, I suppose, in terms of the total numbers.
If I could just chime in here, if we're going to have event services there manning the doors, if we need to make that move, then I don't see the need to make sure that everybody has tickets. One, promotional material has already been out for this from us, as well as the CSOL and the Post and Courier. It's going to be very difficult to get that message out widespread to the people that have the information on the house tour, because they do, despite the fact that they're funded by two different things, they see it as one and the same. So I think we're going to run into a lot more problems if we implement a ticket for this event, rather than just having someone there that says, I'm sorry, the seats are filled. I think that interaction is going to be less than you having people that are really mad because they didn't know that they somehow didn't get the information about the ticket. We've been saying that it's limited capacity, so I think it would actually be a lot less troublesome for our audience to just know that, and maybe we can. I think that it's going to be hard to do tickets for this event. I think there's going to be a lot of people that show up without them, and they're going to be upset.
Frequently, what I've seen, because we begin at at a time where the house tour is sort of ending, there's a good bit of time, but with this situation, the people who are docents and tours may not be able to get a seat at this point. If we're not, this may not be able to. So
Unless someone saves a seat for them or something. But I'm thinking while we're talking that as long as we're really clear in our publicity that we have limited seating, that it would be important to know that if you aren't among the first 300 that get there, you might not have a seat. What about that?
I think it's just, we just emphasize first come, first serve.
What?
Go up 2 hours early. That's what I'm thinking.
Some people will. I can remember Liquid Pleasure one year. Liquid Pleasure's always been so terribly popular. Someone was there at like 4 o'clock waiting to get in, afraid they couldn't get a good seat. So I don't know. I see the difficulties with the ticketing situation. I don't think any of us are event services people or anybody would like to say, I'm sorry, but there are no seats left. But I think maybe that's the better thing to do.
Well, events
But we
are-
only let them in the one door. And so
we let
we
them in.
just close that door and say, I'm sorry, it's full. But I think our publicity has to let them know that this could happen to them.
Yeah, and we can do that, except it, you know, it's already October 7th. So people, I mean, people are already going to have missed some of that information. Like we can ramp it up and certainly include more information, but it's, you know,
Yeah, I think it's diminishing returns. The more we say that we're limiting it, the more people may say they're going to come. I think I would probably leave things the way they are, and just I think Stephanie has the idea of having event services there, so at least the communication of there's no more seats is from them and not from us, and that may be the best that we can do.
Is there any way it can be recorded at the same time and they could go home and watch it?
That's not the same to a lot of people. I don't know how many people just won't
I
watch.
agree.
Yeah.
That's from the recording that Becky and I saw when they did the virtual concert. It's a major project to do that
It is.
video.
That's
It's a big
expensive.
project. Okay.
And another thing, I'm going back to what Stephanie said about where we are facing budget problems. The idea of bringing in event services simply to tell people the room is full seems a little bit extravagant, maybe on our part. Of course, this is very easy for me to say because I'm not going to be able to go to that concert anyway. So I'm not going to have to tell anybody that they can't get in, that it's full. But maybe we need to buck up and take the responsibility ourselves to stand there and tell people it's full.
You need somebody there to count.
Counter for
Or-
sure. A counter for
or-
sure. And
or
I'm used to
take-
telling,
take-
I'm used to telling people graciously that things are full. If you need a fall person, that can be me. Then you can kick me off the council. Say,
There's a lot
"Keep going."
of doors.
They won't, because I do that.
Oh, no,
all the
she does this one. You just said one door.
There's
One door, is that, Bucky,
No,
one door?
One door.
No, Becky, it's 2 doors, 2 double doors in the side. And I think you should keep those doors. You don't want people crowding up on top of each other. So you need to get 2 entry points.
And
Well,
so
is that what we've been doing? I never was down there because I was at the
Yeah,
front door.
that's what we've been
But-
doing.
Yeah, we've been doing those two big doors, and that reduces the crowding at the entrance, which I think is important.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to belabor this, but Becky, maybe you and I and Stephanie, and we can get maybe one other person, Kristen, who has volunteered to be the bouncer. Sort of get together, figure out if we can do this ourselves or if we need event services, but we're going to need to decide pretty quickly on that. So we can communicate over the next week, Stephanie, and sort of figure that out. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other artists that anyone's been in touch with in terms of COVID protocols for the rest of the season?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Beginning in November, I'd like you to be in touch with the folks we've got scheduled in like January and February to make sure everything's okay. And we may know there may be some things that are different. You know, cases are going down, so maybe things will be a little bit better. We can keep our fingers crossed. But check with your agents and the artists to see if there's any changes in terms of their requirements. Stephanie, is there anything you want to say about budgets for the current year and the stuff that we've been doing? I know you sent out something on the risers and other costs.
No, I think, I mean, as long as everybody's paying attention to the back side of the second page of the spreadsheet, you'll see the numbers. It's just that we need to, you know, we kind of usually have a lot more playroom, and as events come up, if something is additionally needed, we're sort of able to accommodate that. But I think that we're going to be a little bit hard pressed to do that if it continues on this way. So everybody just needs to make sure that what they need is already either budget for, or start looking, at what potentially we might need to make a decision on, because if it's
The
not already,
ballet needs risers, right?
the ballet needs risers.
Even for the
They,
young people's, the College of Charleston, the students.
I'm gonna have to look at that, because I feel like, didn't at one point the ballet, they took care of the risers, but maybe that's not now.
To do what?
Did the ballet, we did not budget for risers, and
Right.
I'm not sure why we didn't.
And
Didn't
In
they,
the
didn't they
past-
include that?
I
Their
think in
costs?
the past, they paid for the risers, didn't they?
That's what I was wondering, if it's included in their costs. It's not outlined in the contract.
Right, right. And with the stage, it's hard to know because they've had to modify the stage so much there at East Beach. They are in the middle of getting a new technical person, so I've been talking with William. They're planning to come out, but he wants to wait until he has this new person rather than have to go through it. But we need to find out. I believe that 16 by 20 stage or whatever that they have, that obviously is not big enough for the ballet. So I will be back in touch with them to find out what arrangements they have.
Well, didn't they dance on the floor at East
Yeah.
Beach? Yeah.
Yeah, I think they put a Marley down for their dancers, and then we did the risers for the audience.
Right, right.
That's right.
But they did at one time have a stage that was a small stage, so they've done it both ways. Yeah.
Well, then I think we can anticipate the risers being more expensive than they will be for Pier, because West Beach
Right.
is significantly larger space
Well,
than.
I in the past have arranged it with Snyder's because they have their people that come the day before and help, decide where everything's going to go. But so I'll be back in touch with him, as I say. Hopefully he has his technology man by now.
Stephanie, let's take a look at what we did last time, because I thought they brought their own stuff or arranged it as part of their application and their budget. So we'll take a look at that.
Right, right.
David, Jody, given that we don't know what the young artists will be doing yet, do you think we can just plan to do tables? I think that would be fine for them, even though I don't know. If they do the one we hope they'll do, I think it would be great, because that would be the little musical about writing a musical. We would need a piano for that. So I would definitely not want to pay for risers as well. But I think whatever they do, we might consider no risers.
Yeah, I think it would be easier. We can set up the stage because we're limiting audience capacity. We should be able to set up sight lines so that everyone can see it. Sometimes if we I think that'll work.
Yeah, okay.
Jody. I want to move on to new business. I had asked Van to form a little group to talk about selection process, and they sent a report out in terms of a ranking system, which I thought was really good. And Van, you want to sort of review that real quick?
Yes, I can do that. Of course, we wanted to keep it as simple as possible. So we've done ranking systems before. We looked at the possibility of giving points to a ranking rather than just first place, second place, third place. And then we accept all the ones and all the twos and et cetera. If you give them points, then that actually spreads them out and you get a little more equity, I think, or some separation. So you're sure about the ranking. There it is up on the screen. Another thing we looked at was pre-proposal considerations. You know, we talked about what we should look for in the ranking, but actually some of this needs to be looked at before you even make a proposal. And there's a list of things that you can see. Another thing that came up that was, we looked at annual events, and we have piano bar, the art films, and you can see the list there. It's not complete, I can see. David, I sent you an updated copy, but this is an older copy. To that annual events, we also added Marantz, and we also added a Blues by the Sea, because those are all events that, as far back as I can see, at least in my tenure, they're here every year. So how do we handle those? I know we don't want a permanent annual events list, but should they be in the ranking process? It probably doesn't matter, possibly, because if they go in the ranking process, they always make their way to the top. And they're always there.
Van, I feel strongly that they should be, because there's nothing in our charter or in our protocols or procedures that even mention annual events. We've got things that traditionally we have had every year, but we haven't even had Marantz every year. There've been some years where we haven't. And it's just, I think, what we've decided based on our voting. This is something I want to mention also in terms of cultural events. We had our board meeting yesterday, and one of the things I'm really concerned about, this is a little off the subject of ranking, but the purpose of the cultural events budget is essentially to put heads in beds, to bring in tourists. And our increasing reliance on local groups that people can see in downtown Charleston runs completely counter to that argument. I know we want to support local groups, but using the cultural events budget to do that, if we're ever audited, we could be in some trouble in terms of what that money is used for. And I think we would be hard pressed to say that some of those events are bringing in tourists from out of town. And it's very possible at some point down the road, the town may recapture some of that money to fund events that will bring in people from out of town as opposed to the local groups. I just want to mention that because there's nothing we say in our rules or procedures that refer to things that we have to have annually. So I think everything has to be ranked, because if we bring in a national group or an artist that we would like better than one of the things that we traditionally bring in every year, I think we've got to consider that. That's just my 2 cents.
David, one of the things that helps us to quote unquote prioritize local groups in this cultural events thing is that there has to be an application. And those of us who have brought in groups, like Jody brought in John Pizzarelli and all, you have to have some of us on the Arts Council to actually do that application process. And that gets to be more work and makes it more difficult for us, and it makes it difficult with working with the outside groups to get it all done and the time frame we've got and all this, that, and the other. So that's one of the reasons that we've ended up with locals. So we can tell them, you fill out this form, and we help them fill it out. Whereas if it's a nationally known artist or an agent, we've really got to do the work.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. I think our procedures with the application run sort of counter to what I've been saying. I think that's a problem that we're going to need a long-term fix to look at, because if we really want to use that money, which we're supposed to, for tourism, our application process runs completely opposite. You're exactly right.
And we're going to have to also make sure we have proof in terms of where people come from.
No, we don't have to do that anymore.
I know, but what David is saying, it sounds as though that might be a good idea if there's going to be a question of, these people, what do we consider to be from a distance? It was like 60 miles or something.
Well, when we changed over, the town is now taking all of the funds that come in through the A-tax, and the town is distributing that out. Then the town is giving us money for cultural events that doesn't have any relationship to the A-tax.
This is,
That's right.
okay, your
This is-
cultural funding is sourced from local accommodations, which means that it is not state accommodations. It
Yes.
doesn't meet the same requirements where you
No.
have to have all that information and report back on it. But the
Right.
intent of it is to bring overnight visitors as well as day visitors to the island. We already capture that information when we get them to enter that in for tickets. Now,
Right.
so we would be able to have some sort of way to be able to do that. But I believe the official definition is 50 miles or more.
But when we made that switch, as Judy was referring to, we used to be concerned with the ATAX requirements. But then there was a problem that ATAX funds were not supposed to be used for specifically for entertainers themselves.
That's
And
state
that's
accommodation.
where we got into some trouble because we were always using it for entertainers. And so they took the funds, as I recall, and said they were going to use them for cleaning up after tourism, cleaning up the beach, doing other things that ATAX specifically allowed. And then we
Becky,
got
that's not
money
this.
to use for entertainers.
But
and
Becky,
no
that's not
longer-
this.
Let's
That's
Stephanie clarify that. Stephanie, go ahead and clarify.
State accommodation tax is completely separate from the funding that you guys get. What's getting confused is because Bill and Judy served on the ATAX committee for the town. And so, yeah, and the CSO applied for those state accommodation tax application, but that is separate and it's not which is in this discussion. This cultural event funding comes from local accommodations that are still intended for tourism. They just don't have some of the major strict reporting requirements. However, they can audit us based on the use of our local accommodations money that you guys are allocating for the town.
Yeah, and all I'm saying is that this came up at yesterday's board meeting in terms of just being aware of the fact that the local accommodations money that we use for cultural events ought to fund things that bring people in.
Yeah.
And that we need to just emphasize that as we distribute that money and look at those applications. And I completely agree with Judy that our procedures for this sort of run counter to the intent. It's something that we're going to have to work on.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm saying. Van, I'm sorry to interrupt, but let's go back to the ranking system.
There was no intent to create a permanent annual list of events. It was put there because these always keep coming back every year or almost every year. And for whatever reason, I guess we think they're popular. People want to see them, or we have some sympathy for the group. They need us and they need the money and we bring them in, or they're local and we want to help our local people. But I guess the point is, do we always have to have these same groups back every year? What it does, it knocks out other groups. But it's fine if they are back every year, if that's what the audience wants. I mean, that's why we're here. So yeah, putting in the ranking system, I think we get the same result based on past history of this. And as far as categories, I was looking back at seasons in the past, and we came with these categories because that seemed to be where they all fall. And David mentioned that some, of course, and we knew that, can be put in maybe more than one category. You can't really have genres because that doesn't work in what we do. So that's what we came up with. And we're here today for discussion on those categories. And if there are any comments about the ones that we seem to crop up annually, that's fine. I think the ranking system itself is pretty straightforward. So we've done it before. I think we should rank just like we did last time in each category, and then put the big picture together after that. So
What if I look at a category, some category, and it's got 7 different acts, performers, whatever,
okay.
and I only like 5 of them. I don't want, or 4 of them, and I don't want to rank any of the others.
Well, we're suggesting that you do rank them. And why wouldn't you? Just because you don't like them, put them at the end.
Well, yes, but sometimes it's possible that someone might feel like, I don't want that kind of performance, that quality of performance on our Arts Council schedule, period.
Well, that's what you hopefully take care of before you make the proposal. You don't put anything in there.
Well, yeah,
Can
but
you name it? Can you name many instances when proposals have come in and the quality was not adequate?
I can think of a few. I can think of.
Not since I've been on the, not since I've been
I
on the council. I must go way back.
I'm thinking, and I can think of right off the bat 4 that I
Okay.
did not think.
Okay.
That
So they do exist as far as you're
Yes.
concerned, but
Yes,
we had talked about how to avoid personal preference, and you just said you were going to have personal preferences based on what you like. And
No,
I think we're here. No, you said that you didn't like them. But we're here
well,
to.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm sorry, Ben. But
Okay,
what I
that's
should have
fine.
said is I
We're
didn't
here.
think they were quality
Let me
enough to
talk.
be
Let me
included.
talk. Let me talk. We're here to choose events for our audience, not for ourselves. And personal preference is going to enter into it. I don't think we can keep it out, but I hope it's not real strong in any of your ranking systems. But I don't know. I just disagree that I think if it's on the list and someone made a proposal, I don't think it's fair to them not to give it a rank.
Yeah, and I think, I'm trying to play this and how this would work. And I think, once this point system in each category was instituted, you could easily see that the bottom third in each ranking just didn't get a lot of votes. And so, Judy, the ones that you didn't like would automatically fall unless you were the only person to rank them that way. But there are a bunch of other people on the Arts Council that might prefer them and rank them higher. So,
Right. I understand that. But it's back to what I was trying to say. I don't think it's a matter of like or my personal or anyone's personal like. It's a matter of what the quality of the performance is, the quality of the group. And what we think that our audience would think was a quality performance.
but what I think Van is suggesting is what we may even differ on that in terms of
Yes.
how we would rank. So, you may rank something very high that I would never have here. The ranking system, I would rank it low, you would rank it high. The fact that we have enough members of the council is that the preference would actually come out in terms of the majority would rank this low or the majority would rank this high. So I think it still would work, but it gets rid of that sort of yes, no, where all the no's are ranked equally. Because given a choice between one event or 2 events, I'm going to prefer one. There may be both of them I wouldn't want to see, but I can certainly say I'd rather have this one than that one. And I think that's what Van's and the committee's system as proposed, if I'm not mistaken, Van.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I also think that just I mean, who we are and how we've committed to operate and behave means that we have preferences, and we will, but we're looking for balance. We're looking for
Yes.
diversity. All those things will come into play. And I do think that big disparity in opinions will come out in the wash.
Right.
But I also think that we're mature enough and committed enough to what we want to achieve that there's room for, once something is proposed, to listen to that and think about it and then vote accordingly. But with an eye towards all those things I just mentioned, the balance, the variety, with the quality being very important. So I think we can try it. I think it'll work.
Yeah, and I want to really thank Kristen and Jody and Van, because I think the most important thing are the goals that they've come up with, that balance, diversity, quality, and variety. Because when we look at rankings, sometimes we do think of personal preference, but if we concentrate on those goals before ranking, I think it'll be a lot easier. And I agree with Jody. I'd like to try it out. It won't. I don't think it would hurt. I think we may argue with the categories. I'm thinking, Americana might include world music. I was thinking, what if I wanted to book a klezmer band or a bunch of bagpipes, where would I put them? But that we could figure that out. I mean, I think world music might go under Americana or something like that. But I think the categories are fine. Any of them are going to be arbitrary, and we can sort of decide where to put them, Van. So I don't think that would be a problem either.
Yeah, that's all negotiable. Yeah.
Well, I think with new members and so on, we in the past have worried about what does our audience want, and we've done surveys. And so those surveys probably need to be looked at once again. I know one time, not too long ago, Stephanie included a copy of the survey in our materials when we were considering events. So I think we should look at that again, and maybe it's time even to do another survey, because we have a lot of new people on Kiowa that are a little bit younger and different configurations. So we don't necessarily know what our audience wants.
And it's a tough time having missed a year too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and this was mentioned, and I can't remember, Stephanie, who mentioned it, but at some point we wanted to know why some of the folks who rent properties, like Pam Harrington, didn't include Arts Council information. And I think somebody remarked, well, it doesn't really appeal to some of our younger audiences, so that's why we don't include it. And I think I think Jody's exactly right. And what Becky said, I think we do have some younger folks that are coming in, especially tourists and renting places. And I think we have to be aware of that in terms of that diversity and variety. And I see no problem with, doing surveys and things like that. But we don't want to survey the people that come to our events all the time. How do we survey the people that don't come to our events in terms of what they want to see? Judy, you're muted. Sorry.
Just so you guys know, you actually are pretty due for a survey. I can't remember what year the last one were, but we could certainly partner with the community association that has a broader list and do a large scale survey to all of the community association members to get a higher participation than probably we've had in the past, because I think you're right. There has been some transitions to some younger demographics on the island, and they might not be signed up for the town's e-blast, as we all know, that it doesn't have everyone on it. So, and certainly the Arts Council e-blast list doesn't have everyone on it other than our patrons. So,
well, do you think it's a good idea to show everybody the last survey, which may be 5 years old by now, something like that? But yeah, it might have some meaning at this point.
I can resend that out.
Just out of interest, I think it would be fun to look at that.
Absolutely. But in the meantime, again, thanks, Van and the other group and Kristen and Jody for coming up with this. I'd really like to try this year and see how it works. So I'd like to propose that we use it, and I'd like to entertain if there's a motion to institute it for this year's selection process.
So moved.
Bill moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Kristen. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hold your hand up.
Aye.
The motion passes. Thank you. The only other thing I wanted in new business is I asked a few people to be facilitators for this year in terms of process. I asked Becky to sort of handle classical choral, Judy to handle jazz, blues, gospel, Bill to do pop, bluegrass, folk country, world music. I would handle sort of theater, dance, magic, vaudeville, musical review, and Joan holiday shows. And these are not, we're not forming committees. This is just, if there's a group or an artist you're thinking of in that category, all I'm asking you to do is to contact that facilitator to let them know, so that, let's say, if more than 2 or 3 people are looking at a Christmas thing, Joan could contact them and say, hey, you both are looking at something similar. Would you like to work together on it? So we don't duplicate efforts. It's not meant to restrict anybody from proposing anything. It's just sort of proposes a network of communication so that person can sort of receive the stuff that's being considered and report back to those people considering the same genre. And that's all it is. And
Are we talking about for cultural events as well as for the Arts Council events? Okay.
yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
may I speak to just briefly to the survey thing? As someone who made a living working in quality management, I know how important it is to have a good survey. It's very hard to put together a good survey that gives you actual good information. The one that we did the last time was good, but we've done 2 more that I can remember that I've been in the Arts Council, and they were very poorly done. If you've got a poorly worded survey, your information is wrong. Your information is bad and it's not helpful. So if we're going to go back into the survey business, we'd better be very careful to make sure it is a good quality survey that people can give us good information.
Agreed. Which sort of is a good segue to my last piece of new business, and that's asking Stephanie to report on the job application process for the full-time person.
And to go for a
Yeah,
swim.
so it's been posted for about a week now on the town's website. And I know a few of you have funneled it to different organizations you might be associated or affiliated with. I have gotten a handful of resumes, and the deadline is October the 22nd. So they have until then to be considered within that window. And then I will be interviewing shortly thereafter that. I'm trying to kind of funnel them as they come in and kind of screen them. But so that is the update. We still have a deadline is October 22nd. We'll be accepting applications through.
And just as a reminder, this is a full-time professional staff person for the Arts Council, and I think it's going to be an enormous help to what we do and to really professionalize how we go about our business. So I'm excited about it. Is there any other?
Can we say a little bit more about these chair people? Because I wasn't sure exactly how we were going to do it. So,
well, they're not, yeah, they're
like, give an example, like, would everybody who's got a classical music idea tell me, and then I just simply keep a list? Or, for example, if 3 people say they're interested in a certain cellist, then I talk to them and say, well, there are 3 cellist possibilities. What do you think of limiting that to something? Is that what you see?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't even see it limiting. I see you as just communicating the information so that people can sort of make decisions. But yes, making a list and then reporting it at the next meeting, so that if, for example, if a couple of you are interested in a cellist, you would talk to Becky about it, and I'll ask Becky at the next meeting. I'll ask the facilitators, have you heard from anybody? What's going on? So we all have an opportunity to hear what's happening. So if 2 people are recommending a cellist, and it comes up in the next meeting, it may not be something that I'm going to work on then. I will know ahead of time. So it's really just facilitating communication, not necessarily limiting it, but and I think, Becky, yeah, I mean, if you want to ask people to work together, that's fine. It would be really up to you. But no, you have no power, and you're not a committee chair. So that answers your question.
Well, also, can you give us a list of who the people are? Because I didn't write it down. I don't know who they are.
I will do that, and it will be in the minutes of this meeting, but I will send it out a separate email to everybody. Any other new business or something that hasn't come up?
I just had a small comment. I just had a small comment about if we're limiting the tickets so much. This is to your point, David, about complying with a potential audit. If you're limiting tickets so much and it's selling out before it even gets beyond Kiowa, that's a problem. Maybe.
Yeah, and this is a bad year to even talk about that, just because of that. I used to book stuff at my university, and I was telling Stephanie there were some events where we only had 60 people show up, and we paid like $50,000 for mum and chance. And it occurred to me we could send them all to New York to see the show and give them dinner for what we were paying for the event. We could fly them into the city. And that's something that we're sort of dealing with. And I know Stephanie mentioned, the limited number of people that even came to Marantz. It's a lot of money to spend for a very few people being able to see, but that's the situation we're in. But Kristen, you're absolutely right.
But just as a reminder, I know I forget how easily our patrons are also confused. Our culturally funded events, those tickets get released at the same time to everyone. It's only the ones that are Arts Council Arts Council budget that we reserve the 3-day lead time for Kiowa Island property owners. So it's very confusing for our patrons. It's equally confusing for everyone else, but that's how we've been able to fulfill the requirement for the cultural events to make it available to everyone at the same time. So
our regulars are pretty up to date though, so they snap up those tickets pretty quickly. You're right.
You're right.
Absolutely. Bill, did you have something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I happened to speak with Kevin LaFontaine, who works at the Q Island Club, and he said he would be interested in learning more about what our events are for next year and possibly doing some work with us in terms of using some of their space for some of the events.
Wow, that's different.
So,
let's set up a meeting, Bill. That'd be great.
So, okay, I've known Kevin
how
for
receptive
a
they
long
were to
time.
having any flyers in the club, right?
Yeah. Okay, I'll talk to him.
Great. Anyone else? I have no comments. Any correspondence, Stephanie, from anyone? No. Okay. That being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion?
David,
Yeah.
before we go,
Yeah.
you may have done this before I joined the meeting, but has everybody been introduced to Dylan and Kimberly?
We did. We
Okay,
that was the first
good.
thing we did. But feel free
Well-
to introduce yourselves to them. So,
Anyway, welcome.
yeah,
Thank
we're
you so
really
much.
happy they're there. Yeah, I hope this doesn't scare you away. So,
No. Happy to help.
great. But one of the things I think I'm going to work with you guys, Dylan and Kimberly, and see if you can shadow a couple of events coming up, maybe in late winter or spring, so you can sort of see maybe how how Judy works with Quentin, or so look at the events, and if there's something, a particular event or something that you want to shadow, we'll put you on that so you can sort of get a little bit of an education on the management of these events in terms of what Arts Council members do. That'd be great.
Sounds
Think
great.
about that.
Yes.
And
Judy, do
Chris-
you have something? Okay, nothing? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Bill, we